T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start.
The shuttle on its precise heading toward an imaginary target in space.
Roll program complete.
Roger, roll complete.
The Space Shuttle Columbia, the world's first reusable spacecraft. This liftoff opened a new era in the exploration of space. For the first time ever, a winged vehicle was launched like a rocket to orbit the Earth and then glide back to a safe landing, still aerodynamically sound and able to be launched back into space again and again. From the start of the shuttle program, the key point was that the spacecraft would land after its flight and, with a new cargo and crew, would return to space on another mission. Early flights proved the soundness of both the theory and the system, and the shuttle was ready for work. Key projects in several flights were the launching of communication satellites, which could be done far less expensively from the shuttle than by individual launches from Earth. Spacesuits had been developed for the astronauts that allowed them to move out into the open cargo bay. Here they were outside the controlled environment of the shuttle's interior, performing useful work in the vacuum of space. The bay can carry 32 tons of cargo. Crews followed an almost round-the-clock schedule of experiments. Here in space, life-saving medicines can be developed that are impossible to make in the gravity of Earth. Experiments were important in all shuttle missions, but with Space Lab, built by the European Space Agency, an entire laboratory was taken into space. 2 astronauts and 2 scientists, including one from West Germany, studied the Earth, its atmosphere, and the Sun. Many dramatic shuttle accomplishments were straight out of science fiction. Astronaut Bruce McCandless was able to maneuver himself about in space using bursts of nitrogen gas from his jet backpack. He became, briefly, a human satellite in his own orbit around the Earth. Satellites, vital to industry, communications, agriculture, weather reporting, defense, and many other fields, were soon scheduled for launch on a regular basis, 1 or more per shuttle mission. Another important advance was made with the launching of a giant panel of solar cells as tall as a 10-story building. By converting sunlight to electricity, this type of panel could provide power for a future space station. In the meantime, the shuttle faced its most challenging tasks so far: to rendezvous with disabled satellites and retrieve them for repair. These pictures highlight incidents from shuttle missions 41-C and 51-A, in both of which flights this exacting and important work was done. A $200 million satellite, crippled and drifting uselessly in space, was rescued so that it could be repaired and put back into orbit as good as new. Now we're going to see detailed film coverage of both missions, narrated by the astronauts themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. The crew of Mission 41C, Mission Commander Bob Crippen, Pilot Dick Scobie, Mission Specialist Terry Hart, Jim Van Hoften, and George Nelson.
We're going to share with you a little bit of what the mission was like from our standpoint, and the way we normally do that is with the post-flight film that we'd like to run through for you. If we could go ahead and show the movie, please.
This is the ascent portion of our mission. The countdown at the Cape just went flawlessly. We were really pleased with the way things went on down there. The engine's starting. You can see the shock waves come out of the throats of the nozzles. The nozzles vibrate. The engines get up and stable in about 6 seconds. Solid rocket motors fire, and we're off. And for a new guy doing this the first time, it's really a thrill. And that thing feels like being on a rough train while the solid rocket motors are firing. If y'all have been on a rough railroad track, that's about what it feels like. And it's a very interesting ride. You can function normally. And right before we lifted off, Cripp said, "Get ready for the ride of your lives," and he was right. It's the ride of your life.
It's still really a big thrill on your third time, too.
One of the neat things about this mission was we're going to do direct insertion into orbit, so we didn't do an orbital maneuvering system one burn right after the main engine's cut off, so we're going right into orbit off the pad, and we're going up 250 miles, so the trajectory and everything was a little bit different, and it made a real interesting ride out of it. The solid rocket motors, the engines and everything just are magnificent. We didn't have a glitch the whole ascent, which is really nice. You don't want any glitches when this kind of stuff's going on outside your window.
We all kept on watching Cripp make sure this is the way it's really supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay, solid rocket motors separated. You saw the plumes from the separation motors. Those fog up our windows pretty good up in front. They put a haze on the forward windows when they go off, and you get a nice flash in the windows, but it's a nice smooth separation. This is our external tank coming in by Hawaii. One of our test objectives was to put that tank in so they could take pictures of it. This is the tank breaking up just south of Hawaii. And it's low-light TV, so you get some blooming in it, but you can also see the rather large pieces of the tank and how much it's broken up. And they were trying to measure the footprint of those pieces as they came into the ocean to see how big the dispersion was on them. So that's all bits and pieces of the big tank we carry.
Looked like it lit up the area pretty good over there.
Yeah. And this next picture is the orbiter coming right along behind, and if it hadn't been for the Ohms burn, we'd been right behind the tank, which we didn't want to do. So.
This next series just goes through each of the guys to make sure you prove that we're on board, which we were. Some of our going through our little activities and getting squared away. That shot shows Ox with the Linhof camera we had on board. It's the first time we've flown that. It's got a 5-inch by 4-inch square format that really makes some nice pictures. That Texas coast picture we saw a while ago was shot from that. PJ?
On day 2, we started a sequence of RMS activities that would result in the deploy of LDEF, and can't say enough about our Canadian friends that built and designed the RMS. It's just a beautiful flying piece of hardware. This is the starboard grapple fixture of LDEF that we used for the deploy, and essentially the payload's tied down in the bay with some latches, and once the RMS has it securely grappled, Cripp released the latches, and we pulled it out and put it through its paces for a couple hours, and very steadily poised the orbiter in the right attitude and released the payload rates. LDEF is unique in it. It's a very simple payload, no gyroscopes or anything like that nature on board, and it was incumbent upon us to release it without tipping it or getting any kind of motion started. We hope that the next 10 months to a year it will stay in this exact attitude that we left it in for recovering.
We also carried a unique camera on board that's referred to as IMAX. It shoots a 70-millimeter movie film, and here it shows a scene with me loading the magazine and running it through. It's about 1,000 feet of film in a mag. TJ?
I had a lot of explaining to do what I was doing within the bag here. Every time they saw me at the middeck, I was in the bag, but that's what we used to change the film out from the can into the magazine. We were getting ready for the rendezvous here on day 3, and we got excellent support from the ground all the way in, and the onboard system worked just fine. We made the rendezvous without any problem at all.
This is the in the bay in the MMU getting ready to take off for the satellite. See the T-pad sticking out there in front. Flight over to the satellite was just like we'd practiced in the simulator, except the view was a little better. You'd see we were a little closer than the 200 feet that we'd planned, and so I only did a 2 potato burn instead of a 2.5 potato burn, so I went a little slower than.
But all that felt very comfortable from my standpoint of watching the satellite and watching Pinky do the flyover just like we planned it. It's a nice, stable device that the MMU really performs superbly throughout the flight.
The MMU was really a very, very nice machine to fly. You could put it wherever you wanted. Flying up on the satellite was just like we'd done in the simulator, all the way up to the point here where we attempt to do a dock, and the T-pad hits that little pin that's sticking out and bounces right off. That's a view from the helmet-mounted camera.
The satellite initially was rotating at about 9/10 of a degree per second about its long axis before the attempts to grapple it.
This, I think, is the last attempt I made at doing the docking. We had some pretty good rates on the satellite already. You can see go in there and I watch it'll bounce right out again. You bounce out at about the same rate you go in.
When Pinky bounced off for the third time, I guess I became convinced that we were not going to be able to get it with the T-pad, and it didn't look to me like it was worth trying to come back and get the other T-pad because I didn't have any reason to think it'd work any better. We did have a rotating grapple up our sleeve. However, the satellite was tumbling end over end, as you can see here, and the grapple fixture is right under one of those solar arrays, so there's no way we'd be able to attempt the rotating grapple either. That was when I asked Pinky if he thought he could try grabbing hold of one of the solar arrays, which what he did here.
And the MMU, again, performed flawlessly. It was a fairly easy task just to fly up and grab the solar array and walk out to the edge of it and try and stabilize the satellite. And when I let go of the satellite, we all thought we had it stabilized, but there was some energy in there someplace.
Now, it basically had stopped rotating in the pitch and yaw axes, and the only thing we had going was, it appeared to us, was that a little roll wrapped the long axis again, which is what we wanted. So we brought Pinky back in and attempted to go ahead and grapple it. However, when we went back, it actually developed more of a tumble again. However, this time it was in a mode that we thought we could gain access to the grapple fixture. We made about 4 attempts at it, and it was tumbling in such a fashion that TJ came within inches of getting it one time. I thought for sure he had it, and so it blossomed. Our TV camera did, that he uses for the grapple, and I really contributed that mostly with the reason that he actually didn't get a hold of it that time. The ground told us they thought they might be able to stabilize it, which was new data to us, and they gave us some fuel figures that what they needed, so we elected to go ahead and go along with that option and backed out and to try again another day.
This is letting the bees out of their little house here, we did this a couple times a day. It was good entertainment, if nothing else, and we were watching their progress on their honeycomb.
Yeah, we made sure that there was no way they were going to get out of there.
I checked that first thing.
This is a little bit of in-flight repair with the EVA power tool. We weren't programmed to use it inside the vehicle, but it turned out it was a really good way to take off and put on panels so that we can get at some filters inside the vehicle and clean them. And Pinky did most of the work, but this is just me doing putting some in just for practice.
You know, the government runs on paper, and we have to have our teleprinter on board. It's just taking a message out of the teleprinter for the day. And when we changed our flight plan there, we got flight plans up from the ground every day like that.
We do our daily exercise like we always do. So we have a treadmill on board, and we all spent 10 to 20 minutes a day on the treadmill whenever we could find time.
Okay, and we're getting set up to go in and try the second rendezvous attempt. Incidentally, from a rendezvous standpoint, we noticed a a few minor anomalies with respect to that, but the basic system really works superbly. Rendezvous works just like it did back in the Gemini days, as far as I'm concerned. We can get 2 satellites together, and we'll probably get a chance to exercise that extensively out in the future.
That's the slowest anyone ever saw Crippen move inside the shuttle. He was doing that so we could take a picture of him. Intrepid pilot.
Always easier in 0G. Moving around up there is really nice.
Put on the seatbelt just to hold me in the seat while we were doing some of our burns.
Notice it takes a few books to do that operation. We got them spread out everywhere. We came in and rendezvous with the satellite the next time, and it had about 0.5 degrees per second rotation rate going, and this was just the way that we had practiced it down here on the ground. Maneuvered in, and TJ grabbed hold of it with no problems whatsoever. That's it, the gold thing outside the window there.
And you can also see the arm moving in the other window, so that was right about the grapple time. This is the solar max stowed in the flight service structure, and just the way we wanted to see it in the first day, but we finally got it there.
This is the guy we called Oscar. This was the third spacesuit we had on board. Just show you what it's kind of a demonstration here, just how easy it is to move things around. This weighs about 375 pounds.
This is where the guy said, "Oh, that feels good." Keep
Been in there all this time. Spacesuit comes in basically about 4 pieces. Here, you take his pants off, and it's got 2 gloves and a hat. It's we had excellent luck with our spacesuits. Mine was absolutely no problem at all. Pinky had a little problem with his air conditioner, but in general, the suits work really well. It's the Solar Max when it's rotated down, and then it's twisted around so that we can get at the operating end of it, so we can do our repair. The structure that this thing sits on, the flight support structure, was built up at Goddard, and it worked very well.
Scope was our valet for the EVAs. We couldn't have gotten in and out of the suits in a real efficient manner without Dick. He helped us a lot.
This is about the only films we got of the change out on the ACS module. We did most of it in the evening there before we came up to the light.
These guys were going so fast we couldn't take any pictures. Slow down, we'll get some sunlight.
You can see the big blue tool there is the module servicing tool. This is like a big torque wrench. And the satellite was built to be serviced in space on these particular elements, so it was a fairly easy job to do. It's a matter of sticking this tool into the hole there where the screw was, this big Acme screw, unbolting it, and there was only 2 screws holding each one. It's standing on the end of the remote manipulator on the manipulator foot restraint there, the platform that you work off of. We had tools and whatnot on it. It was an excellent platform to do work from in space. Either TJ, and we even let Crip fly me around a little bit.
Yeah, they even let the old CDR drive around.
This is up working on the main electronics box. Mickey and I took turns standing in there and working on it. Again, it's really a nice machine. This is from the helmet-mounted camera, just how many wires are in there. I don't even know how many there were, but there's a whole bunch of wires.
This is the part I think I mentioned to you folks. If there was anything I really didn't think that we might be able to do, it was to change out all these little electrical connectors, and these guys made it look like a piece of cake, just like they'd been doing it all their lives.
There's 11 connectors, and each one of them had up to like 78 wires in it. So, but it turned out to be, after all the training we did, it really wasn't very difficult. The interesting thing was looking inside that box there, inside the satellite, there's a whole lot of parts in there.
Now, the reason they made it look easy was that they practiced it enough. They had done that task hundreds of times.
This is doing a survey of the satellite before we redeployed it. That was really quite a ride to get put up on a pedestal like that.
I was having a lot of fun driving Pinky and Ox around it. For a while there, I thought I was having more fun than they were, but I'm sure I wasn't.
And then cap it all off, got to fly around the MMU and do an engineering test flight on it. We're looking at center of gravity offsets and things like that, but in general, as it seemed, I was having a real fun time in it. It's a fine machine. Flies just exactly the way you want it to, and I think we'll get a lot of use out of it in the future. affords a fine view of the world here. You see the two little lights on the side of my helmet. We had helmet-mounted lights to illuminate the work you're doing at night, and they work extremely well, too. They're just battery-powered lights.
After Pinky and Ox had finished the repair work, that was a pretty long day, EVA and all, and the next day, Goddard said they were ready for the deploy of the satellite. They had checked it out overnight, and we hoisted it up on the arm in the proper position and pointed it toward the sun with the orbiter, and then RMS did the rest of the work by releasing it without much noticeable rates on the satellite. Backed the arm away, and then Scopes took over flying the orbiter back and away.
And all that went very nominally. We backed away from it and departed the area about 45 minutes after we deployed the satellite. We were planning on staying around a little longer than that, but all the test and checkout was done. Everybody was happy with the satellite, so we went off and left it. And hopefully we left it in a lot better condition than we found it.
Did leave it a lot better.
We did leave it.
Okay, this is more of the housework. I did a lot of the cooking and bottle washing, and if you look out the window there, you can see the snow going by. We're doing a water dump at the same time. Cooking a meal is about like doing it on the ground there.
This is a bank shot by Crippen.
Yeah.
Trying to get my eggs in my mouth.
We do. You do tend to eat in space like you do on the ground.
Almost.
Almost.
Some of us do.
Land shark.
Scopes got all the dried fruit in the pantry there.
Nobody else seemed to like it,
Chopped
but
it
it
all
was really
down.
good.
At least I eat in space. I eat like I do on the ground.
Right. So did Ox.
So does that.
That was the real rotating grapple, old boy.
Yeah, we gave us time to play up there, too.
Finally, they told us we had to come home and quit playing up. We had to wave off once. I had lots of practice of that, having done it on my last flight, so it worked exactly the same way. No problems at all. Just tell us where you want to land.
These are 16mm motion picture taken out of the overhead window. This spike thing was just sat over the middle of the payload bay during the whole entry, which was at night. It's a big shock of some sort, and all this flashing and burning was going on around it. I kept tapping everybody on the shoulder trying to get them to look at it. They were busy flying the orbiter.
That's what it looks like outside the forward windows. That captures the color very well. It was dark most of our entry, so we got a chance to get a fantastic light show. Vehicle flew like it normally does. We had no problems at all in entry. It was completely nominal as the vehicle behaved superbly throughout the flight. We had very few malfunctions. Lighting was such that we couldn't pick up many landmarks visually until we came overhead Edwards. About 45,000 feet, we began to pick up normal landmarks. There's deploying the gear at about 300 feet. And we were using lake bed runway 17, and that all went very nominal as far as we were concerned. Touchdown and held the nose off until 180 knots, which is a normal way we practice it, and then we derotated at about 1 degree per second. We have made a modification that we started on 9 on the flight control system that gives you a little bit more control over the nose as you're lowering it. It's a lot more positive now. I was interested in exercising the brakes since I hadn't used them very well previous times, and we have had some brake problems. We did get on the brakes pretty good, and they again malfunctioned to some degree. Here's 5 heavy guys climbing off, and everybody, maybe with a little bit of sea legs, but everybody feeling very good. And that concludes our movie and presentation. So if we could have the lights, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome back once again. And again, it's my privilege to introduce the commander of 51A, Rick Hauk.
Thank you all for joining us today. We have a very fun mission to talk about, obviously, and we're going to enjoy sharing some of it with you. Briefly, let me introduce again the crew. To my right is pilot Dave Walker, and to his right, Dr. Joe Allen, Dr. Anna Fisher, and Commander Dale Gardner. Why don't we go ahead and we'll roll the movie, which we'll narrate for you. It's about 18 minutes long, and then we'll throw it open for questions. That's our crew patch, which parenthetically, with some inputs from us, was designed by my uncle, who's an artist in Annapolis, Maryland. You've all seen launches before. They're always spectacular to us that ride on them, and I know from watching some of them, they're spectacular from the ground also. You're aware that we had a scrub the first day due to upper level wind shears, and even though it was a beautiful blue sky on that day, it was the right thing to do to cancel for the day, and we went back to the quarters and relaxed and got up the next morning, and 7:15 Eastern Time, here we go. This is the second flight of Discovery. Always a beautiful sight as it goes through its roll program to point us downrange, and certainly a thrilling feeling. I'd like to turn it over to Dave Walker and let him give you some of his impressions of his first flight.
Well, I was excited, obviously. They don't measure our heart rates anymore going uphill, but I'm sure mine was really thumping. On the other hand, the vehicle flew absolutely smoothly and exactly as we had been prepared to expect it to, and the whole thing felt very controlled, although there's a tremendous rush involved with this particular experience, as you might imagine.
Anna Fisher was our flight engineer, sitting in between Dave and myself, and being prepared to prompt us, make sure we did all the right things, which she did beautifully. Joe?
8.5 minutes later, we were in orbit. I asked if I could open my eyes yet, and this is what one sees when you do open your eyes. It's beautiful, beautiful sight. The crew members, Rick, looking somewhat relieved that the launch went so well. Trusty pilot Dave Walker, unidentified mission specialist Anna Fisher, and straight from the college campus, Dale Gardner. That is just a quick scenes of life in orbit. Our first task, of course, was to deploy Telesat. It was a nighttime deploy, and so this is a TV picture, nighttime TV picture of the deploy. It looks more or less like in the day. You just can't see it too well. Went smoothly, and really not much else to say about that. We had another deploy the next day, and Dale, why don't you describe that?
Flight day 3, we deployed the SYNCOM satellite, called LESAT sometimes, similar to what you saw this last spring on 41D. It's a large satellite, as you can see, comes out in the Frisbee fashion that we've talked about before. It's about 14 feet in diameter and weighs 13,000 pounds. And it really looked large to us as it came out of the payload bay. Very slowly also, as you can see, only just a little over a foot per second departure from the bay. The one nice aspect about the SYNCOM deploy is that we punch it out down towards the Earth in the attitude we're at. So as it leaves the bay, and you can see here, we have a beautiful view of the Earth down below as the satellite departs.
This is a few scenes of some of the things we do on orbit that don't generally get shown. This is a fairly mundane operation, but very important one, called the on-orbit flight control system checkout, which Rick and I did. Gives you a chance to see what the flight deck looks like a little bit on orbit, rather like a large airliner. The CRTs there can be seen blinking, and from there we're going to show you a little bit of the mid-deck. This actually was taken by Dr. Allen with Captain Hauk pushing him along as he held our movie camera in front of him, going down into the mid-deck, and you can see the portable foot restraints that we attached to enable us to stay put, our treadmill that we use for exercise, And some of the lockers, that particular one that's open contains in-flight maintenance equipment, which Eagle Electronics used. And over on the starboard bulkhead of the middeck, you can see the sleep accommodations, which I think I'll let Dr. Fisher discuss a little bit about the rest of the middeck area.
Well, in this particular sequence, we're showing how we prepare a meal. And we divided these tasks up among all the crew members. Dale usually wound up doing breakfast because nobody was quick enough for him. Making meals is a fairly easy task on orbit. All you had to do is essentially like, it's very good, essentially like backpacking. You essentially add water to the food, and it was very good. I'll let Rick describe what we're doing here.
Well, at the risk of endorsing a product, that's an interesting physical demonstration on orbit of the fact that things really are weightless.
That's how the crew was rewarded when we did something properly. Rick would release another handful.
Since Anna did more things right than anybody, she got most of them.
You can see it is a rather dreamlike world, both awake and sleeping. This is Dave in the upper bunk after the first EVA.
Saying, oh no, we have to do another one?
Yeah.
Part of our time on orbit is spent doing filter cleaning. What you see Dale and Dave doing here is removing some panels so that we can get to access to the filters. Again, it's much like life here on Earth. Things you got to do, you got to eat, you got to be able to clean all of your equipment. This actually took several hours. We were doing this on the day in between EVAs. Then once those panels were removed, we were able to get access to the filters, and here I am cleaning again. I thought I was going to escape that for a couple of weeks, but for a week or so, but and this is, as I said, a very important part of our work on orbit, to keep things clean. You can see it wasn't just me who did that. Up on the flight deck, Dave's "a clean ship is a happy ship."
Dave on orbit described Dr. Allen as large in personality but diminutive in stature. Whenever his personality got a little bit too large, we would stuff him away in a locker for a few hours, and then when a task needed to be done, it was my job to go down and get him out. This was a somewhat unpleasant task for me, but Joe seemed to like the freedom at times. And
the hard part was putting him back in there again later once we got it.
Flight days 5 and 7, of course, are the EVA days. This is the airlock. You can see the two suits up by my left and right shoulder, the main suits. Down by my right leg is a spare suit that we carried. When it was determined the two prime suits were going to operate properly, we took that spare suit out and didn't use it. Up on the flight deck, the folks were preparing for the rendezvous.
Yeah, the day started fairly early for Rick and myself. About an hour and a half into our post-sleep activities, we got involved in the sequence of burns that were going to require to bring us in proximity with the satellite. As you can see here, we were always checking and double-checking each other, making sure that every input we put in was correct. This is a sequence through the COAS, our device for that Rick used to look overhead to sight on the satellite. And this, as you can see the satellite at a distance of about, I guess we were 50 miles here. It looked like a star as you looked up. And I'll hand it over to Rick now to talk about the final parts of the rendezvous.
Here we are probably about 300 feet, now maybe down to about 50 feet away from the satellite. We're firing lots of jets on board to slow us down, to rendezvous with the satellite, putting it just about 35 feet from satellite to overhead the bay. After the next sunrise, here's Joe getting ready to go out with the MMU.
We have a sequence of footage now that are drawn from both the EVAs, interspersed. We won't distinguish between the two, but try to give you a flavor for what it was like Rick says right at sunrise we went out. Dale's actually flying out here with Rick recording most of this on all sorts of film. About this time I thought that he should think twice about it, but Dale, go ahead and describe.
Joe had done this on flight day 5 and had proven that the MMU and the Stinger concept for capturing the satellite worked, in fact worked perfectly. And I essentially had just a lot of fun on flight day 7, knowing that it all worked. It took a big load off my mind. I flew out a little bit differently than Joe had. You might remember Joe commenting that the sun had bothered him. It was in his eyes during the last phase. And you'll see here in a minute that when the sun finally does come up, I was fortunate enough to use the orbiter's nose to shadow the sun. So my approach to the satellite, and you can see that the shadow of the nose of the orbiter now is on the satellite and on me. And so my docking was a little bit easier with that information that Joe had given me from the earlier EVA. MMUs perform flawlessly, as you heard us talk about from space, and this method of capturing the satellite certainly worked well. And
you can see the arm in the lower right corner of the picture, which was a position that Anna had put it in to assist in our station keeping task.
Notice that the people who brought that satellite to us left it in absolutely perfect position with regard to its rotation and lack of nutation, which we appreciated.
We can't emphasize that enough. The satellite originally was rotating 50 revolutions per minute, but was slowed down by ground controllers very painstakingly over many, many weeks' time. Positioned and slowed down. And in the slowing, they left it still turning at a very, very regular rate. So it made our job absolutely easy as pie. Once docked, the procedure then was to use the MMU to stop the rotation, which was equally easy. You can see it's now quite stable, and the MMU pilot could then maneuver the satellite, turn it wherever we wanted it in such a way that Anna could grab the grapple fixture.
Yeah, this is a sequence from the first rendezvous, and it worked just like it did in the simulator, getting Joe commands to maneuver it such that I could see the end effector, the grapple target, and it went very well, very smoothly.
From an MMU crewman's point of view, it's interesting to see the large arm coming up right over your shoulder to suddenly grasp the satellite. This a shot of Dale working on the satellite, the top end. In fact, he just removed the Omni antenna with some very fancy space equipment known as pruning shears.
That was about the last nominal portion of that first EVA. Here we see where we first learned as a group that the common bracket clamp, which Dale has in his hand, was not going to fit at the appropriate place, which was on the common bracket on the satellite.
Let's parenthetically emphasize that that was a very well-designed piece of equipment by folks here at JSC, and unfortunately we just didn't have the information available to us that would tell us that it would not fit.
And it's appropriate to add here that we had enough pre-planned contingency operations available to us that again had been developed not by us but by the whole team to carry us through, and we went to Plan B, as we called it at that point.
David was the keeper of Plan B. Dale and I had not the vaguest notion what it was, but we were confident that in his plans Dave could direct us. And the first step, he directed me to come off the Stinger, fly the MMU back to its storage place in the orbiter, and then prepare to hold the satellite at the antenna end while Dale worked on it. You get an idea of the flying qualities of the MMU here. It is as smooth as glass to fly. You just can put it wherever you want it, turn it as you want it. Interesting, you see here the reflection in my helmet of the bulkhead. You see the two windows through which the three other crewmen were working, or behind which they were working, and in fact, here at the last you can even see the movie camera that Rick has pointed out the window taking this movie. The bright spot on the bulkhead is the light that we use to illuminate the work volume out in the payload bay during the nighttime passes.
At this point we said, well, you can see Dale working in the back, by the way. That's a good shot of him showing the teamwork involved getting that foot restraint ready with some tool boards and so on so that we can press on to the next task.
Meanwhile, Joe is getting ready to doff the manned maneuvering unit and go to put himself in the portable foot restraint, which is forward of where you could see there. And here he is now, and he's supposed to talk here, but I'm going to say first that this was not easy for Joseph. He worked very hard for a long time here, and both of the EVA crewmen worked very hard during this particular phase of it. We were all very, very concerned that this part went well, and fortunately it did.
You can see, though, that the satellite, although it weighs about 1,200 pounds, is only massive in orbit. It's not heavy, and you can move it to wherever it needs to be moved. The most difficult part was you could not tell really where you were putting it. And so we relied totally on directions from Dave most of the time and occasionally as to where it should be moved. And they would just say, over your head or more to the right. And we tried to be very careful that we were not moving it to a place where it would hit the side of the orbiter or a piece of equipment on the orbiter, lest it be damaged.
Joe was bringing the satellite back down into position for me to put the shower cap, as we called it, was a cover that we put over the nozzle such that small particles of, that were inside the rocket engine would not contaminate the payload bay. Here I've attached the adapter, that interface that will allow the satellite to go into the payload bay, onto the satellite, and I'm torquing down one of the 9 hard dock latches that we had to use in order to form a tight fit between the satellite and that adapter. Now Joe has handed the satellite and adapter combination to me. I'm holding it, and he's going to go around to get in position for us to berth the combination into the bay.
And it worked. It worked. There shows a photo of the 2 satellites and a little advertisement there.
We had to, several times after flight day 7, when both were in the bay, go up to the windows and just look back there to make sure both satellites were there. There were times when none of the 5 of us really believed that we'd actually pulled it off, and it was certainly comforting to look back there and see both those satellites staring at us.
Well, in the words of an old philosopher, it ain't over till it's over, and I guarantee it's not over yet, because we still have to land. And here we are at runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center. Good calls from the folks in the air and on the ground. John Young, weather pilot. The weather was good to the north, so we landed with a slight tailwind. And coming down here at 300 feet, Dave deployed the landing gear. And the orbiter flew beautifully, just as we trained for it to fly in the shuttle training airplane. Look at the vortexes being shed off the wingtips there, and when we touch down, you can see how the smoke from the tires gets caught up in those vortices. Real pretty picture. Touchdown was at about 190 knots, I understand about 2,700 feet down the runway, and we used a total of 93 to 9,500 feet of runway during the rollout. It was very nice for us to come back to the Kennedy Space Center. All of our families were there. Of course, it's nice for the program that we got back there also to reduce turnaround time.